shake out all the illusions off when you're watching this video. Greetings, it's Moss 808 brought to you by the Esoteric Soji. And this topic is a personal topic that I experienced. So you're seeing it through the lens of my bias. That's the disclaimer. I'm trying to shake it off as trying to make it clear cut as best as possible. So I did some research on the topic on TikTok, and I've come across knowing the difference between your inner child and your ego. And this is during like a heightened conflict or escalation of a conversation, a disagreement, argument, what have you. And on TikTok it says, your inner child is your unheard, unloved, unseen version of yourself. Your shadow self is your rejected, your opposed, downcasted, chastised version. And your ego is the sacred protector, or carnal instincts. Now, in the healthy sense, it is the sacred protector. In the unhealthy sense, it's just a defense coping mechanism to avoid your exposing your vulnerability. And I use the word expose, emphasis on that word, because that's how you're feeling with an unhealthy ego. It's something that is exposed, uncovered, versus just it's there, but you don't talk about it much. You have to have a select group of people or individual that you trust and can confide in. So my personal experience, I was in a disagreement, as arguments go with couples and things, and I was presented with an ultimatum to react and explode to a certain phrase or just normal how, when you have that default and like you're not that spiritually self-aware that you are able to de-escalate. So you're just going to go with your move and deal with it later. But, I was using a healthy ego. The healthy ego is one that confides and identifies with your inner child and creates a vulnerability. It's vulnerable because it's sensitive on the surface when you present it. Therefore, it allots you more experiences, more options and opportunities. But like I said, my ego identified with my inner child, and so I reacted with a nonchalant reaction and owning up to, this is how I feel. People try to judge you and, dismiss like, oh, your baby feelings. You know how women be, But people in general, because there's don't think business sharks people don't do that. Oh man, you want to be upright. Oh, you want to be moral to the code. Like, ain't nothing wrong. Ain't nothing wrong with that. So what I'm saying is that your ego, a healthy ego, the difference is a healthy ego identifies with the inner child. So you might be wondering, where does that leave your regular ego in different areas of your life? It's still your ego, but it's your ego because, one, you'll take something personal as far as a status, or a perceived status, or a goal that you're attempting to reach, and you're solely focused on your own goal and you're stepping on individuals. And then you have your inner child. Your inner child was unseen or unloved by a form of, let's just say, leadership. So your ego, might over identifying with your inner child might shy away from what its duties are, which is to protect your inner child. But since you identify with your inner child, there's nothing for the ego to protect or defend, because you have nothing to defend as far as an experience. Now, this is why I say when you have a healthy ego that identifies with your inner child, during confrontation, you might see, okay, I'm healthy and I'm safe. But sometimes when you're fighting fire with fire, you gotta get the ugly shit out. And you have to allow your partner or whomever to get their ugly shit out or their projections, so you can see their feedback from how they view you by certain mannerisms or certain subconscious traits that you might be yielding that might trigger them and things of that nature. Even though you're in your healthy space in your mind, like, you still have natural tendencies and reflections of your parents or your uncle or auntie or whomever is raising you and their wounds by default. But you being identifying with your inner child, like, you're aware of this, but you're like, okay, it is what it is. If you're still triggered, you're going to be looking in the mirror like, damn, who am I becoming? Am I becoming like this individual? You're over worrying and you're in fear mode, right? So that root chakra, because it leaves a void. Now, when your shadow self is in place of your ego, you're in the dark about a lot of things. So people might see you as gullible, or, but you're just open to experience some things. And then, like, it's a polar shift. You might be gullible on one end, but when you're angry, you're going to express that anger. Because a lot of the times, for me, if you express your anger, but at the same time you're overthinking, wow, I'm expressing this, you're not really feeling the anger. You got to let your feelings If you're going to be sad and be vulnerable and cry. If you're going to be angry, say what you need to say, vent, and go to another room. And you know what I'm saying? This word accountability. Yeah, you said this, but when you have that healthy ego, like I said, you weren't you weren't saying it from the point stance of, I want to hurt you because you hurt me. You were just generally angry. So what you may have been saying may have been vague. You may have used cuss words that you never used before. You may have called someone a certain cuss word that you normally wouldn't, but the energy isn't the same type of sting as what phrases or sentence you used it with relative to their, whomever or however the situation may play out for, in their soft spots, right? So the other person might be viewing you as, yeah, you're not using this curse word, but it's like, something's different, right? So, like, that void is, when your ego is healthy, what does the ego do? What does a warrior do? A warrior rests, or it trains. So when the ego is resting by denying itself, again, tying back into, okay, you're aware of the difference between your inner child and your ego, and you're aware of, in a confrontation, when you're using your ego that coincides with your inner child, you're a phoenix that's dusting off the ashes. You know what I'm saying? It's not in the phase of death, but it's in the phase of just done, of just space, of just ash. You know what I'm saying? Lifelessness, but it's a tangible, you know what I'm saying, of earthy, of granny nature, right? So, like how sage ash still has its power. But anyways, like, yeah, the ego is that a warrior is at rest or training. Now, the ego at rest is denying itself. It's not denying the trauma, however. It's denying the victim mentality. Even to the extent that when you provide advice for say individuals or collective that are doing inner child healing, inner child readings, you aren't projecting your wounds, because you're presenting your ego in coalition with your inner child. Like, you see yourself as that little child that's helping out their best friend, has that broad imagination of, like, okay, we're 5 years old and you're moving to another neighborhood, but somehow you communicate with your parents and things like that, and y'all have meetup times and play dates and shit, and y'all still hang out even though this person might live in another city. You keep that relationship going because you had that vocalization. You opened up your throat chakra. You opened up your heart chakra. It wasn't a matter of that to you. It was you working with your shadow self and you not being egotistical, but being like, hey, this is that commitment. So let's go into the dark and see what it's hitting for. Not shining the light and exposing and having shadows dance around. So like I said, you aren't projecting your wounds. You are in that survivor. You are a survivor. You provide that disclaimer. This is why you see certain disclaimers as rehabilitated gang member or former gang member. Not just, or maybe sometimes ex-gang member, but sometimes, a lot of times, not, even a gang member included. You're just shut down that whole portion of yourself. But when you say rehabilitated, you know what I'm saying? This is your ego tying it to yourself. And this your exoteric form of shadow work with no karmic ties or pressures. Also, you don't take shit personal. So that's the difference between when your ego or a portion of your ego merges with your inner child, because it starts from your inner child and your root chakra, depending on like your intimate or committed relationships. If you're not in those, you're just running around with your inner child and your shadow self. And that's another video. But I don't really feel like going into that video. Just because, like, making a long drawn out video about that, just because it's like, your shadow self is what you rejected. And that might be your ego, that someone said something and you rejected this version of yourself. Now that's a whole villain arc. And then that goes back into your inner child, and it's like, boom, even if you have a healthy ego, someone's gonna see something just because you are jaded and you see the world in a jaded portion or worldview, that you're gonna corrupt your inner child. And that's how you're knowing the separation of your inner child from your shadow self, because of your different views of what's relative to today, and you're being over anxious about the future versus your inner child, which is seeing what it saw growing up. So that's knowing the difference between your inner child and your shadow self. But yeah, I want to also pose this question, Engage in the comments, Because my intent is this isn't solid. This is my experience. So what you think about that? The difference between your inner child and your ego and during a conflict and things of that nature. And like I said, with your inner child and your ego, you're reacting in the form of not seeking a reaction or seeking attention, because your inner child didn't receive that. But your ego is a defense mechanism for that. And yeah, your shadow self is all encompassing the concept of anger. And that's how you're not blending the colors. So thank you. Stay protected. Stay protected. Stay putting your barriers up and being aware. And, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy alone. So stay alchemized and transmuting this energy up. Thank you. Peace.